Deana.
And I'm Suzanne, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Rise and Shine It's Hypnotime podcast.
With Deana and Suzanne.
That's us.
The purpose of this podcast is to help you along your healing journey, to become the very best version of you that you can be, and to create the life of your dreams. We want to give you the tools you need to succeed through personal stories, guided meditations, hypnosis, NLP, and self-hypnosis techniques, as well as interviews with experts in a variety of healing modalities, from energy workers and spiritual healers to chiropractors, acupuncturists, holistic medicine, and much, much more.
Yes, and we also want this podcast to be a place where people can come together, share stories, and be reminded that you're not alone. In fact, the healing journey is a lifelong journey, and we are just so thankful that you're choosing us to be a part of your journey and that we have you to be a part of ours as well. And with that being said, let's start the show.
I'm ready when you are.
Hi everyone, Suzanne here. And Deana and I are so excited to present this week's episode featuring Gila Zak. She's a certified hypnotherapist, quantum biofeedback specialist, and truly an expert in her field. Not only do we discuss the different ways in which the emotional and physical self responds to trauma, sexuality, and human behavior, but also how the different elements play a role in our lives, what your handwriting says about you, dream therapy, and so much more. This was such a fun and informative conversation, so we don't want to keep you waiting any longer. Let's jump into it. We are so excited. We've got Gila Zak here with us today, and she is just amazing and a wealth of knowledge. So for our listeners, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what you specialize in?
Yeah, so I have been a hypnotherapist now professionally I'm going on my 9th year, and I specialize in body image, sexual trauma, medical trauma, religious trauma, any kind of trauma really. Also in relationship strategies, and that's what I hope to talk about a little bit more later, and also peak performance. So I like to believe that if we're dealing with some of the heavy stuff with the trauma areas, I like to balance that out with some of the light stuff, which is peak performance.
Right.
And I tell people that I practice very clinical and very metaphysical, and all points in between on that spectrum, depending upon the client's belief system, or sometimes they spontaneously pop into an experience that kind of might benefit from more of the woo-woo. We need to be prepared to guide them through that.
That's awesome. Finding that balance.
Yeah,
That's absolutely true. So what sort of approaches do you take in your sessions? Do you have something that you'd like to lead into this specifically with, or do you want to just share a little bit more about what you do and expand on it?
Well, I'll start with what I feel is really important, and that is really getting to understand the client's hypnotic personality. Each of you have your own unique personality. We all have these different levels and layers to it. And when we're in hypnosis, we have the same expression of ourselves. It's just our hypnotic personality. So I was very well trained in how to fully assess someone's hypnotic personality so that we can learn how best to guide them into hypnosis in a way that they're going to be very receptive to, and also how to phrase the suggestions in a way that they're more likely to resonate with or connect with.
Yeah.
So we generally...
I was going to say, do you want to expand on how you figure that out a little bit?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. We generally call this suggestibility tests or assessments. So a few of the different resources that I use are, of course, the standards, books and balloons, or books and bricks, finger spreading, arm raising, magnetic fingers. But there's also a series of questions that we can ask a client that were very, very well thought of over the course of about 10 years and cultivated to get a yes or no answer. This basically 2 sets of questions asked in a different way. And then as we compare the yes and no answers, we're likely to see what the true yes is. And that can tell us if the person is more of an indirect, or what we call emotional or intellectual suggestible, or whether they're more a physical, body-centric, direct suggestible.
Right.
And this is all based on the workings of John Kappas out of HMI, the Hypnosis Motivation Institute.
Right. And they do have varies of this with different associations, like they may say permissive or authoritative.
Exactly.
Right. And all sorts of different tests. Do you want to do one of the little tests? Do you think it can be relayed over a podcast like this, that you can kind of do an example of one of the tests? or should we just move on and maybe you give us an example of something that you'd prefer to in the
Well,
podcast?
I can tell you what some of the questions might be, and then you and your listeners can kind of listen along and see where you might be.
Yeah.
So the idea is to go with the first answer that comes to mind. And if I ask, do you sometimes, don't overthink it. If you sometimes do, just say yes. Some people will say, well, sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. And I say, that's okay. If you sometimes, just say yes.
Okay.
So the first question would be, have you ever been told that you walked or talked in your sleep as an adult? And the next question would be, are you very influenced by the person's tone of voice rather than what they actually saying?
Mm-hmm.
Another question we might ask is, have you ever awakened from a dream and felt that for a moment or two you couldn't move your body or talk?
Right. Very good.
Another question we might ask is, when you're in a situation where you don't know the people or it's a new experience, do you sometimes feel it's difficult to relax?
All right.
And then one of my favorites is, do you sometimes feel that you're so anxious to come up with your side of the conversation that you miss pieces of what's being said?
Right. Like
So
you're
there's
waiting to answer instead of listening.
I feel like you just revealed all my secrets. Yes.
So there's a lot of questions on the suggestibility assessment, and you can find them on my website, among other places. But when we look at this, I use that with other tools to see if the person is congruent, because they might answer these questions one way, but whenever we're doing a self-directed assessment, people will sometimes answer the questions the way they think they are, the way they wish they were, or the way they're actually behaving. So there are other tools that I use to see, are they behaving congruent? Because if they're not, that kind of tells me as a therapist where we might need to start.
Right. Because they, like you said, they may be saying what they think you want to hear or what the right answer would be, and not being sincere. So you can, when you layer those questions, you're able to bring out the truth, even if it's not being stated verbally right away. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think, as NLP practitioners, as hypnotists, we are unconscious behaviorists first, and then we're therapists second. And so when we look to understand the unconscious motivations and intentions behind why someone's thinking, feeling, or behaving a certain way, that is where we start. And, how can we get that same need met in another way?
Very good.
That's awesome. So for the listeners that may have been answering your questions, if they answered just generically yes to all of them or no to all of them, would that make them more emotional?
Absolutely.
Or
Exactly. That's the I'm glad you asked this, because that does clarify it, doesn't it? So in the theory of suggestibility that I was trained in, which is Capucinian, you're either an emotional, intellectual suggestible, which is the way you take information in, or you're a very direct and literal suggestible. So the emotionals tend to be more influenced by suggestions that'll influence the way that what their emotions are, and the physicals more what they feel in their body. So no one's ever 100% one or the other. We're 60-40, 70-30. Some people who fall into the category of somnambulism would be right in the middle of 50-50. So by the way that they answer those questions, you can kind of see, and there's a template and a formula that you get. It's like a grid. So you can see if they answered this many yes on this side, this many yes on this side, then you add them up, and there's a numerical way to a formula to figure out where they are.
Well, that's neat. Yeah. Cause I certainly would be bouncing back and forth a little bit with those. So, so we would have to figure it out.
yeah.
You got a task ahead of you.
You may just be a somnambulist.
I don't know if I'd be 50-50. I do think that if I was just to judge myself, which, I don't know, but if I was just to judge myself, I am emotionally connected, but I also have this really strong balance of, physical and understanding things and being practical, because I was like a single mom for so long, mom and dad. And I think that I look at things both ways. Yeah. Because I have a very calm, resolute, but I also have an energy and an emotion that I connect with. So yeah. And
this would be a skill that you cultivated. So the emotional or intellectual suggestible, for them, they process more via inference. Right. And then the direct suggestible says, I need you to don't expect me to read your mind. Tell me what you mean. Be very clear with me. So sometimes we get thrown into situations where we have to develop a skill, a coping mechanism or defense that works for us to be able to kind of navigate our way through the world, for sure.
She's so smart.
Yeah, I just love her.
I learned from good people.
Well, I'm thankful that you're here to share this wisdom with everyone. Can you actually tell us a little bit about how you found your way to hypnotherapy?
Yes. So people often ask me, how long have you been a hypnotherapist or a hypnotist? And I say, well, the real answer is all my life, but professionally only for about the last 9 years. And some of my backstory that I share is that, I've always been an observer, and some people are just very observant. And I like to say this is kind of how I survived my childhood, was learning to be observant, because I was raised in a very counterculture environment. My parents were, in the summer of love, flower children. And so we were living in very rural East Texas. They had moved back to rural East Texas. And so our family was very different than the average rural, family in Texas back in the 70s. And so when I started realizing, why does my father have a shaved head and he's wearing denim and carrying an iguana skin bag? But that dad over there looks very different.
And so wearing a coat and a tie and have a military haircut.
That's right. And then just the foods that we ate were so different, and our belief system. So I just kind of got very curious about what motivates our behaviors. And so I like to say I've kind of been a hypnotist my whole life, because I've had to learn to observe and then make sense of kind of how my world around me is, and then reframing that. And that's what we do. We help people to reframe. So that was kind of like, again, how I coped through my childhood, is, reframing things. So I tell my clients, I can polish any turd. You bring it, we'll polish it. We will change it for you.
I love it.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I know you brought up earlier that you delve into several different, trauma, sexuality, and everything. What makes emotional and physical sexuality so important to the therapy that you do?
This is my favorite question, because when you understand Kapusinian theory of mind and this concept of suggestibility, there's also a sexual suggestibility. And this is the way that you outwardly express yourself in relationships. So we know there's the intake, right? How are we taking in information, direct or indirect? But how we express ourselves is what we call the physical suggestibility. And in Dr. Kapus's theory, there's again the E and P, the emotional and physical, and they have very different unconscious motivations, defenses, and ways that they navigate. So when we're dealing with sexual trauma specifically, very often, if the person is an intellectual or an emotional suggestible, they will ruminate and spin on it and think about it. And it tends to control them in such a way that they develop this intense fear of losing control of their mind, their body, or environment because of the trauma.
Right.
And when we're talking about the physical will very often embody the trauma physically, where they have those physical cues of, they'll get triggered by something and they feel the physical trigger first, and then it translates to their thoughts.
Right. Can you give an example of that, like it manifesting in a physical way, and then?
Sure, absolutely. So let's say, for example, the emotional or intellectual sexual, there's a bit of a disconnect between the emotions, what we're feeling, and our body. And so the emotional sexual might intellectualize the trauma, dissociate from it on an emotional level, yet their body keeps score, as we know, and remembers the trauma. So it's usually not until later, when they start feeling these physical shifts, that they are able to connect the two. Whereas very often the physical sexual is feeling the physical effects of the trauma, and they just don't know what to do with that intense sensory information,
right?
Because they're putting their body out there to protect their emotions, and that can express very differently, especially in their sexual relationships, often than the emotional sexual.
Yeah, aren't you doing something in the conference that has to do with sexuality, or is that one of the themes that you plan on presenting on?
Yeah, it was last year. I did a presentation on that, and I've done it 2 other times before over the last 6 or so years. But yeah, I don't get paid for this. I know George Kapus, he's the current director of HMI, and I asked for permission. I'm like, hey, are you cool if I go to conference and share this? Because I think it's such an important missing piece that can really kind of be that kind of game changer when we understand if someone's putting their body out there to protect their emotions, or vice versa. And he's like, go share it, as long as you give Dr. Kapus, the credit. I'm like, of course. So I don't get paid for any of this. I just love it. I live E&P. It's once you start to learn it, you'll start to see who your friends are and their partners. And even when you meet other people. And what I love about this theory is it's not gender specific. It doesn't take your genitals into account or your sexual sexual identity. It's about your behavior.
Right.
So it's very, very wonderful. And we can learn and grow with it. It's not something that we're pegged at, and then that's kind of who we're labeled the rest of our lives.
So me being Scorpio doesn't have anything to do.
Of course it does. This is a common question. No, but this is, I love when people inject some humor, because there's a lot of truth in humor, right?
Yeah, I've heard a lot about Scorpios, and I know that I've had to reel it in, you know?
Yeah. So that brings up a valuable point, because I don't believe that there's one metric that we should ever measure ourselves by. And there are astrological influences. There are family of origin influences. There are energetic signatures. In Chinese medicine, there are the 4 or 5 elements. So I think when we bring, again, just like having more than one therapist or more than one practitioner on your team, if we bring in all these other things, we can see how best. So I always ask for the birth date, of course, from my intake form, but there's a method of energy coding that I use that can tell me if this person has a lot of fire or wood or earth or metal, and I let that play into it as well.
That is so cool.
That is so interesting. Definitely.
Yeah.
Can you kind of maybe explain a little bit how those different elements maybe show up?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the theory in Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, is that there's the 5 elements. There's 4 major ones, but if we consider the earth element in the center, right, then you have wood, you have fire, you have air or metal, which is kind of interchangeable, and then water. Right. And so according to when we're born, the season, the time of day, and even the region in which we're born, sometimes this can help to influence kind of how those elements play a role in our lives. So people who have a lot of fire energy tend to be very social. They tend to have a lot of physical energy, stamina, spontaneity, or an endurance. People who have a lot of wood energy tend to be empathetic, intuitive, creative. They tend to be very socially minded, social justice. People who have a lot of water energy can be really super intelligent and charming, charismatic. And then people who have a lot of metal or wood, those are the determined people, the ones who can see things through to completion and closure. And how many times have you been around somebody and say, well, I just feel really grounded when I'm around them? Mm-hmm. That's probably somebody that has a lot of earth energy.
The calm energy. I think for my Zodiac or whatever, isn't Scorpio a water sign, even though I can relate. And I think that this works for everything that you do, even with the tests. There's bits and pieces of us in all of it, but there's a dominant area, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Even palmistry, when you do the finger spreading, when you say, I'm going to count from 3 to 0, and in a moment, those fingers will start to begin to spread slowly at 0. You can even see, does the pinky go out first? Do all the fingers go? Does this one leave first? Mm-hmm. And when you look at palmistry, each finger has a quality to it, a personality per se. Does the thumb stay like this, or does it spread out? So I have this book, Palmistry for Dummies, that someone gave me years ago. And I took the time to learn, what do these fingers mean? Because that can give us some insight. And I like to say, when people say, wow, you know a lot of things, I say, well, I know enough about a lot of things to be annoying or dangerous.
I love that.
Right. That's cute. That's cute.
So,
that's awesome. And whenever you brought up the palm, I thought you were going to talk about handwriting analysis. So sorry to interject that here, but that is something really interesting I'd love to discuss with you if you don't mind.
I would say nice segue. Very well placed.
Thank you.
So again, some schools of hypnosis training really emphasize handwriting analysis, and HMI is one of those. So I have an advanced handwriting certification, advanced handwriting analyst. And this comes back into the suggestibility, because again, I ask every client to take a blank, white, unlined piece of paper and write as much or as little as you feel inclined to about what you want to change with hypnosis. That does 2 things. They bring it to me to the session. What kind of paper it's on, what color pen they use, how much pressure, that gives me information. The other thing is, again, we can see, are they behaving the way that they tell us they're behaving? Because we can see confidence, we can see introversion, extroversion, we can see trauma, we can see how deeply immersed they are in their unconscious mind, how deeply immersed they are in their logical, intellectual mind. We can see even their suggestibility and sexuality as far as their suggestibility goes. So it becomes this wonderful tool. And then for those of us in the profession, when we're new, we can teach someone to hypnotize another person in 10 minutes, right? Because we're all out there walking around in hypnosis. Excuse me. But what do we do? And so once they're in hypnosis, so how many times do we hear new people or people saying, wow, I'm working with this client, but I'm kind of feeling like I'm stuck. Is there a script for this? Well, when your client comes to you with that piece of paper that they have written out what they want to change with hypnosis and how they feel, there's your script.
Love it.
And I tell them this is going to become a script we're going to flip for you. This is a story that you've come to believe. So handwriting analysis, in my opinion, is essential. And not everybody that learns it practices it, but I feel it's really valuable because it's also a way for us to go back. Let's just say we've had 3, 4, 7 sessions, and we can go back and say, let's take a look. Do you still feel this way?
Right.
Oh, look, and let's check this one out. And then you get that aha moment.
Yeah, you
and
validate.
like, wow.
Yeah, you get to
That's
validate that they have made changes, because a lot of times you have different personalities, but somebody will come in and say, this just isn't working for me. And then you'll say, wait a minute, are you doing this? Yeah. Well, are you doing this? Yeah. Are you still doing this? No. Well, look at all the changes, And so I have this, cue words that I use that
Deana-isms.
that they're subtle yet significant changes, and that you need to pay attention to what's different, not what you think's not working, because it's been to the extreme of somebody coming in and they have changed, 10 different things in their diet, but they had pizza on Saturday with their family. So they felt like it wasn't working. And it was like, oh my goodness, look at this and this and this and this. Have pizza every Saturday with your family. Because if you're doing this 6 days a week, you're still going to be in awesome shape. You're still changing habits. You're still going to get healthier. And it is working. But, you have to draw that out in them and let them see it. Yeah,
exactly. I think it plays back to that. It plays back to that all or nothing, right? So many times we have to have it all or let it all go. And when we give people the space to give themselves grace and say, yeah, I had a piece of pizza on Saturday. I had some pizza with my family. Yeah. Again, when we understand their sexuality or suggestibility, we can tailor even that conversational hypnosis in a way that really, can make
it's important that they know that it's not about perfection. It's about progress. It's about change. And it's about
I love
being happy when you're doing it. I was wondering with that handwriting analysis, because I have, I've looked into this. I've had my handwriting analyzed a little bit. I don't even remember the results now. It was way back when I first got certified in Marlboro there at the NGH. They had some automatic writers. Is automatic writing also involved in the handwriting analysis, or is automatic writing more about, putting down whatever your thoughts are, or scribbling whatever comes to mind?
That's a good question, because especially people who are in more of a spiritual community, they'll say, do you want an automatic, writing sample, or do you want just a handwriting sample? Mm-hmm. And it's my understanding that, when we put our pen to paper, this is ideomotor response. It's a direct reflection of our emotional tendencies, personalities, state reflected through handwriting. Automatic writing is different. That's where we put ourselves into a state of trance, and we're writing, we're just swirling on the page, or we're, making lines. And then we're writing a question that we want answers or insight to. And then we let a stream of consciousness or unconsciousness write.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I think they're similar, but very different, because when someone's writing, here's what I want to change with hypnosis, they usually have thought about it.
It's a conscious. Yeah. Good answer.
Yeah. I was wondering if maybe, and I know that everyone is going to be, on a case-by-case basis, but are there, specific examples, like if somebody has super bubbly handwriting or just incredibly neat handwriting, does that kind of reveal anything to you off the bat, or?
Absolutely. Remember, it's an expression of our personality traits, tendencies, and cues. So if someone has really big and loopy handwriting, if their L's are really big and wide, and if they make a H, it's really big and wide. If their Y's and G's go down really big and loopy, they're very likely a physical sexual, and very likely a physical suggestible. And that is because, number one, it takes a lot more physical energy to write that way. Mm-hmm. And number two, when we think of, I have some talks on E&P, and I love we could do a whole episode on E&P, but the idea being that the physical sexual generally unconsciously is most afraid of being rejected. And the emotional intellectual sexual is generally most afraid of losing control or being dominated or controlled by someone else. So if that physical, sexual, and suggestible is making those big loops in their H's and L's, or even in their T's, they're very likely overly suggestible to what other people are saying about them.
Mhm.
They're very, very influenced by the criticisms and compliments of other people.
Right.
So yeah, if the handwriting is really neat and small, that person's probably more of an introvert. They're probably somebody who likes to be in control. They like order. They probably make a really good CPA or engineer. If the handwriting is
maybe protect
exactly
themselves, you know. And
exactly.
with my handwriting, you know, it differs so much. It would be really interesting to do a couple of them, because from one day to the next, it's different. Even the slanting, there's only a couple of things that I do the same. If I'm writing really fast, I've been writing a long time, you know, I can't even read it. It's just, you know, it's scribble, but sometimes it's neat and loopy and got a rhythm to it. So it's really interesting how our personalities do come out, because I can see mine on paper. I can't figure it out, but I can see it.
How many personalities do you have?
Deana, Cindy, Lisa.
That's right. I love it. But that would be a great exercise, wouldn't it? To give our clients, say, I'd like you to write at least one sample a day for a week or two and date it. And then maybe, write, if you're doing it in the evening, that would be the ideal time to do it. What happened that day? Was it a joyful day, a difficult day? Because that's going to also influence your handwriting. So it'd be a good little exercise.
Yeah, that is really cool. And I've noticed, like, even what I do too is, like, if I have a piece of paper that I know that someone else is going to see, it is the most perfect handwriting that's ever existed. But like, I can hardly read my own, like, just normal writing. Like, I don't know.
And I don't care.
But I don't know if that says something to maybe how, like, what I'm projecting versus like what it's really like, or what I want to put off.
The first instinct is, is that worried about judgment of others, obviously, because
how we're being seen. So if you think about going back to the classroom and you are sitting there with the teacher and you're learning your letters and you're in, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, and the teacher's over you saying, you need to do it like this. And the reason why they teach us the rote way to do it is because they have to start somewhere, right? We have to have some baseline for which we understand the shape of this letter.
Right.
But then when we get older into our teens and beyond, we start to cultivate our own personality and identity. That's when the handwriting is likely to change. So if you're thinking that someone's going to see your handwriting and you get self-conscious about it, it could go back to maybe the way that you were ridiculed by a teacher, or it could be that it's important for you to be seen, because people whose handwriting is generally more legible and neat, there's an unconscious desire to be understood and seen. Whereas the people who it's really fast, or it's really a scribble, they're either very fast thinkers or they just don't give a shit.
Right. I was just going to say that it's like, the need to please or make somebody, appreciate or be proud, it is a judgment. You're concerned about the judgment. And if you don't care, you don't care. Which it's funny, because people who are high achievers, a lot of times, like doctors, they've always been criticized for not having very neat penmanship, and they don't care. They don't have to. Their job's something else, and that's not the priority. Right. So
and also people. Exactly. And also that's a good point. What's your job? Because there's sometimes I'll ask, are you an engineer? Well, yeah, because they are taught to write a very specific lettering in engineering school, or an architect. And a doctor, they're usually so busy writing and signing on so many things that they just have to scribble it.
That's not
people who sign their name on a check. Right. So, sometimes that doctor might still have a desire to be seen, but in his capacity as a doctor, he's writing really quickly.
Right.
But I would say for me, if I were filling out a greeting card for somebody, I'm going to be mindful. I'm not going to put my chicken scratch on there, because it's important to me that they can read what I'm writing.
Yeah. And plus, plus, if you're writing it to somebody that you really care about, like a Valentine's Day card, you want it to be pretty.
Sure. And you want to be seen by them,
Of course. You're writing that, I hate you letter. There's going to be lots of exclamations and underlines, and, it's going to look a lot different. But yeah, totally.
Right. Yeah. Kind of aggressive. Kiss my butt.
Exactly.
So you've got so many different modalities that you work with and that you combine. I know that you do a little bit of dream therapy with your clients.
Yes.
Do you want to segue into how you use dream therapy?
Sure. So again, this is another staple of the training that I had. And the theory is that we don't really truly know why we dream. If you look at all the different schools of thoughts, all the different research, everybody has their idea, but nobody truly knows for sure.
Right.
So we have to take and gather all the information, all the data, all the studies, all the theories, and we put them together into, I kind of looked at all the 4 or 5 major ones that I could find, and I saw where the commonalities were. And that's kind of where I have landed. And it happens to fall very in line with how I was trained. So if we think of the theory of dreams being a few things, we have 3 major stages of dreaming. For those of us who have regular sleep cycles and we're not on medications that can alter our dream, or we're not taking sedatives or stimulants, and we're having a regular old dream cycle. Think of going through the day, and when you get mail in your mailbox and there's one of those junk mail days where just your mailbox is just crammed full of junk mail. Those dreams that you have in that first 90-minute cycle are kind of like just throwing out the junk mail. Okay. Just stuff from out the day that just really didn't have any significance to your emotional well-being, your physical well-being, or whatever. Right. The dreams that you have in the middle of the night, that midsection time, those are what we theorize are called precognitive dreams, where the subconscious is trying to predict what's going to happen tomorrow based on what happened yesterday. It's a problem-solving dream state. It's a way to consolidate memories and to basically take the day's experience or the week's experience and process it. So predicting and processing. Then the theory is that the dreams we have in the last hour to a few minutes before we awaken before we wake up for the day, those are considered venting dreams. That's when the unconscious mind has taken all the crap out. It has problem solved, consolidated neural stress, emotional stress, general stress, big stress. And then those venting dreams say, I've processed it, I've done with it, I'm venting it out and letting it go. So when I use dream therapy with my clients, I give them a little book with my logo and my information on it, right? And in there, I ask them to keep track of, if the dream wakes you up in the middle of the night, I want to know 3 things. First and foremost, I want to know what's the dominant emotion in the dream, because that's what you're problem solving or trying to predict. 2, who are the people, the places, the locations, because those are going to be the symbols and the places and the timing cues for why you're having this dream. And then 3rd, how did you feel thinking about the dream? So they'll bring that information back to me. If we're working on somebody.
I was just going to say, what type of emotion did it evoke? Yeah.
Exactly. Because that's what the unconscious is really trying to deal with. So if someone's coming to me for anxiety and they're, their second session in, they come back and they're like, I don't know if this is working because I've woken up the last 3 days and I'm having these dreams where right before I get up in the morning, I'm just really anxious. I'm being chased or I'm lost and I'm anxious when I wake up. And I say, remember, those are your venting dreams. The hypnosis is working. And we're going deep into the unconscious. We're pulling out those splinters, those tethers, those threads, and those dreams are all the proof you need that you're doing great.
That is so awesome. And working with dreams, have you noticed just maybe some common dreams that pop up with your clients, or common,
animals, like birds or snakes or
even like falling dreams or something
flying, or a dream that someone just shared with me about losing their teeth. And
that was my dream. I had it the other day.
I didn't want to say that, and
I know she's
want to share it.
That was
she's trying to be all polite. You're just offering it up.
I just wanted to offer the opportunity to talk about it without pointing it out.
Yeah, but I have heard that is a common dream. But
sure.
So
there are many common dreams, and it's usually those common dreams have to do with common themes that people are always struggling with. But if we think of the symbolism in the dream, teeth might mean one thing to one person and something else to others. So I like to use this analogy. If I was kicked in the head by a horse at the age of 10 and you are a very accomplished equestrian and we both dream of a horse, that's going to mean something very different. That symbolism is going to be different. So when it comes to common dreams, there's usually falling, being chased, feeling like someone's hunting you down, feeling lost. And when you think about the bigger context of that kind of matches up our daily life. Our work schedule is too pressing, or there's too many demands on us. So we're being chased, lost as we just don't know how to cope. So I wouldn't say that I've had any themes over the years that seem like I could track them down, but I do ask clients if they have a history of recurring dreams or nightmares, because that's very significant information.
That is significant. Yeah. I got that.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the biggest, I guess, not difference, but recurring dreams versus just memorable dreams that happen once? Does that just mean like something deeper is happening internally that you haven't processed yet, or it's just been going on for a long time? Or
I would say, again, it depends on the quality of the dream. Mm-hmm. If the person has an ongoing dream in which they really feel satisfied and uplifted and empowered, that's a good message that the unconscious mind feels that it's got the resources and tools it needs to overcome anything.
Right.
If the recurring theme is inadequacy, sexual stuff, where it's not good or pleasant,
fear
and it's
or pain,
fear, right. But generally, again, we're looking into what does the dream mean. And I will put clients, sometimes the whole session is just the dream therapy. I'll put them into trance. We'll go in, let's go back into whatever system we want to use to recall the dream, and they can really fill it in. And now that we're in hypnosis, in that same state of consciousness where we are when we're dreaming, let's ask the unconscious mind, what is the symbol here? Right. What do the teeth falling out mean?
What did you mean?
What are you what are you losing? If the first thing that it makes you do is want to, hide because you're embarrassed, mm-hmm. then maybe you're struggling with, again, judgment or being embarrassed of something. Sure. I remember a couple of times, because I was a single mom for many, many years, all those kids. I know I have like 7 kids, and so I'm taking care of all these kids, and I have to move, and I don't want to move. And there was a couple of times this has happened in my life where during that time, I was not only like angry, like I couldn't get anybody to help me, but there were several times that I had like animals, like a bear or mm-hmm. wolves or something. And I felt like I was being surrounded or attacked. And I knew that I was threatened in the way that, I was doing something, being forced to do something I didn't want to do. And it was creating, a threat or fear of the unknown, or how I was going to handle it, or how I was going to make it better, And so, mm-hmm. They're certainly stimulated, but they can go all different directions according to that person and their mind and their creativity. And
What about people who say they don't have dreams?
It's usually a chemical issue. They're either taking a sleep aid or an anti-anxiety, antidepressant. Maybe they use drugs, drink a lot. There's different reasons why someone would say they don't dream, but most people do dream. They just don't remember them.
Right.
So when you think of coming out of dream state, when we do the pre-talk with client, we tell them, there's alpha and then there's theta, and, theta is one of the stages of dreaming. So if we transition from the theta into alpha super quickly, sometimes we can forget what we dreamed, because it's just, we woke up really fast, versus those times where you're kind of laying in bed and you're like, am I asleep? Am I dreaming? Oh yeah. Right. You've got more time to come out.
And it can be as simple as being an age thing. I mean, when you go through menopause, you don't sleep as well. Maybe you don't go as deep, or you're waking up more in the night.
Yeah,
you may not have as many, because I don't have as many dreams or as vibrant dreams as I used to, but I still do on occasion. They come out, when I do drugs.
I'm just nice.
Just joking.
Very nice. Yeah. I think too, something that we shouldn't neglect to cover is that, dreams, depending upon a person's belief system, can also be a great way to travel dimensions through space and time. They can present with past life memories sometimes of echoes of what that might look like. So when they have these experiences, I don't confirm or deny. I let the client believe what they need to believe about it.
Right.
I can tell you that getting into hypnosis myself with my daughter, she was in elementary school and she developed a fear of vomiting. So emetophobia.
Really?
And she was in fourth grade, maybe third or fourth grade, probably third grade. And, someone kept saying, oh, it's probably, do you think it's a past life thing? I'm like, well, I do believe in reincarnation, but I don't see how this could be a past life issue. She got stomach flu. We had to drive home in the car with her brother for 5 hours. He had stomach flu. She clearly developed a negative association to vomiting.
Yeah.
A year goes by and we're dealing with this incredible phobia that she has.
Wow.
And so finally I take her to a hypnotist. And the hypnotist does her thing and says, take me back to the time and place where your fear of barfing began. And my daughter saw herself as a little boy with chocolate brown skin. And she was able to tell this whole story of being hit by a truck and how the fluids backed up into her throat as he lay there dying, and all these unresolved emotions and fear. And because she kept telling me, Mama, if I throw up, I'm going to die. If I throw up, I'm going to die. And I'm like, no, you're not. She's like, yes, I am.
Wow.
So for her, having resolved the trauma, you therapize that part of the echo or the imprint, as I call it, the past life. She was done. One session and she was done with it.
Right.
So
and like you said, it is a belief system, because if you don't believe in reincarnation, doesn't mean that you cannot be relating to the story that needed to be taught during that time, or
absolutely
generational memories, or
right.
through the DNA. There's just so many different ways to experience that you have to just give them permission to experience what they do and connect to it how they do, because there's a lesson there probably that needs to come out one way or the other. Yeah.
And it's amazing too when you just acknowledge the source of it. It's so easy to just release it. Yeah.
Very good.
It's never a dull moment in our offices, is it, ladies?
No.
but it's also very rewarding, because you have people reach these pinnacles or empowerment or releasing things that they just could not let go, or embracing things that they need to embrace, and they couldn't find another way to do it. When your daughter was going through that, was it before you actually got involved in hypnosis? And is that one of the ways you got involved? Like to see how it worked?
Yeah.
So cool.
I mean, I knew about hypnosis because, as I mentioned, I was raised by these very counterculture people. So there were always books about Edgar Cayce and, books on mentalism and Jose Silva. There was always all these really cool books to read around the house. But I just knew it existed. And I remember holding my infant baby, my firstborn. And I remember thinking, someday I'm going to be hypnotized so I can go back to remember what this felt like, what he smelled like. And so in my mind, the use of hypnosis was more to kind of go into memories.
Right.
But I didn't realize it could be used for peak performance, for you name it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when I had that experience with my daughter, I was right in the throes of getting my training as a certified biofeedback specialist. So I kind of thought, well, I don't have the time and energy to give to that right now, but one day. And then that day came about.
That's
10 years
neat.
ago.
Well, you certainly
glad it did.
Yeah, you're certainly very intelligent and very, talented, and you've got a lot of different aspects and perspectives to pull in. We could probably do another session with you easily.
Oh yeah, lots to discuss.
Not a session, but another podcast, so that you can expand on those things.
But if there was one thing, if there was one thing you'd want everyone to know, therapist, hypnotist, or just anybody listening, what would you like for that to be?
Please take a time to reconnect with your imagination in a positive and productive way. Because I think I did a talk with Gregory Sarton Beckett. He's a colleague of ours, a hypnotist. And we were talking and he was asking me, what do you think is the most important thing? And it just popped into my head. I'm like, imagination. If we don't have it, if we don't connect to it, learn to use it and cultivate it, treasure it, cherish it, we often dismiss it. And we know as practitioners that people are already using their imagination, just usually in an unhelpful way.
Right.
But when we're children, we believe anything is possible. We put on the superhero costume or the ballet, the ballerina outfit, and we are that. We embody it.
Yeah, your mind is open.
Yes.
It's very open to accepting all things. Mm-hmm.
So I think we should never lose imagination. I had an imaginary friend when I was a child, and to this day, I can't tell you what they look like, but I so remember what they felt like.
Wow.
And it was just, one day my parents embraced it. They thought, oh yeah, she's got a playmate. And then I don't know who and how it happened, but someone probably told me that's not real, that's stupid or whatever. And who knows, maybe that
made you turn it off. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, were you an only child?
Oh, no.
Okay. So
I was the baby at one point. No.
So it wasn't because you lacked siblings or people to communicate with. It was just simply something that your mind created. That's neat.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think imagination is important. Don't forget it. Make friends with it. Learn how to use it in the most productive way.
Very good.
I love it. And the last thing that we have for you is something we like to do with all of our guests. It's just our little fast fun fact round where we ask you a few quick questions so people can get to know you on a different level.
Okay.
So are you an early bird or a night owl?
Ooh, I'm both.
I think that's my new answer.
Yeah.
I think I'm both.
Yeah, mine.
Sometimes I stay up late. Sometimes I like to get up early.
Right. I was always a night owl, but as I've gotten older, my body wakes up early. So when I'm a night owl, I just suffer. It's just like, you're only getting 4 hours. You need to learn to do something. One way or the other.
Yeah, I love it.
Do you know your zodiac sign?
I am. I'm a triple Capricorn, Sun, Moon, and Mercury, baby. So look out.
Wow.
Awesome.
What is your birthday?
January 9th.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just had it. Huh?
Do you know your rising?
Just had it. Are we allowed to swear on this podcast? Is that appropriate or not?
Yeah.
So I tell people the only thing that keeps me from being a total asshole, because I'm a triple Cap and I have Virgo in there. The only thing that saves me is that my rising sign is like 2 degrees between Pisces and Aquarius. So that's what makes me open-minded,
Softens
sensitive.
the edges just a little.
Softens the edges. Otherwise, you wouldn't want to know me.
That's really funny because I'm also a Pisces rising and a Capricorn moon. Yeah.
Okay.
And
I can definitely see your Capricorn moon.
I don't know anything about, I know, my birth time and my birthday and that I'm Scorpio, but I'm later Scorpio because I'm a November Scorpio, November 14th, born in the afternoon, but I don't know.
I think you're an Aquarius rising because I remember looking that up, but we'll get back to you guys on that.
Okay.
So can you tell us what is the one song that gets you hyped up no matter when or where?
Oh, see, I love music. This is a tough one but if I had to tell you, and I love music across all genres, but I'm a big Dave Matthews band.
I remember that. Yes.
And there is a song, Bartender. And there's great live versions, but the studio version is impeccably done. And what I love about it is that you can exchange the bartender for God. Next time you listen to that song, imagine the bartender is God.
Okay.
In the end, in that beautiful melodic end, it's like, I imagine the person's died and they're just like ascending.
Oh, wow.
And it just gives me goosebumps. I can be driving, and if I arrive at my destination, I just sit there and close my eyes and listen to it.
Write that down.
Yeah, that just gave me goosebumps. You talking about it. We'll have to play it after this. So what lights you up and excites you the most in life right now?
Oh, I'm just grateful to be alive, honestly. I mean, one of the things that I say to myself often is my mantra, my prayer is I'm grateful for who I am, for what I have, and for what is yet to be, whatever that looks like.
Right.
So I think what lights me up is recognizing how far I've come, what I've overcome, what I've created, what I have yet to create, what I have yet to do.
Right. Just having that gratitude for being present in the day. Yeah. That's nice.
I'm like anybody. I'll have a moment where I don't feel great and I use my own tools, or I just let myself sit in it and acknowledge it and see we're humans. We're going to have these emotions. But what lights me up daily is just the promise of, I wonder what kind of
new
magic's
day.
gonna happen.
Yeah. That's why we have the sunrise. Rise and shine.
I
love it.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes.
Normally we ask if you have one nugget of wisdom from today's conversation that you'd like to share. I know you already mentioned imagination, but if you have maybe one more little nugget to leave our listeners with, that would be awesome.
I think it's something that a lot of us already know and we're using to work with our clients, and that is rarely is it ever about you. It's usually about the other person. It's what's going on with them. Yeah, and so often we tend to personalize it and make it about us. But if we can pause and recognize that it's usually about something going on with them.
Or even to expand on that, or to look at it a little bit differently is it's usually everybody, it's about ourselves. And so when somebody else is doing something, they're not generally doing it to you. They're doing it because of how they feel. So because we all are self-absorbed in our life and our worries and our concerns and everything. So that's what I actually tell my clients, only the verbiage is just slightly switched, is it's not about you. It's about them. It's about what they're going through or what they're doing. And they're not probably even thinking about you. You know, they're experiencing their life, and they don't have room to open up and recognize what they may be doing or may not be doing to you or for you. So, yeah. You're so good.
We always need that space to check ourselves, because we all have the capacity to be, really friendly or really a fucker, right? We all have that capacity. That's right. Yeah. So I do have a potty mouth. That's if someone says, what is one thing people don't know about you, is I love to swear.
And you're very good at it.
Hey, it adds a little emphasis,
Yeah. I'll ask clients, I say, how do you feel about a therapeutic F-bomb? Sometimes they're really powerful, and I can get 80-year-old ladies are like, let's bring it out.
I can relate. I used to be a lot worse. I'm not as bad as I used to be, but I certainly can feel the emotions sometimes when you just say,
it's cathartic.
For sure.
Kiss my ass.
How'd that feel?
I feel one of my favorites is let's just chuck that in the fucking bucket, shall we? Chuck it in the fucking bucket. Toss it.
I like
this. Has been so delightful. You two are lovely.
Thank you so much again for coming on this show. You're just amazing. And I know our listeners have surely gained so much wisdom and insight from today's conversation. So we hope to have you back soon.
Yeah, go ahead and we're going to have your title and everything underneath the podcast, but go ahead and share your information, who you are.
How can people get in touch?
Yeah. So I'm here on the Central Coast of California, about halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco. If you've ever been to San Luis Obispo or Morro Bay, that's kind of pretty much where I live. You can find me at quantumwaveshypnotherapy.com. And I do have a video on YouTube under Quantum Waves Hypnotherapy. It's one that I put out there. I have ideas to do more. I just haven't had the time. I have a pretty busy practice and personal life. But there's a video on there, an audio that you can listen to. It's called Glitter Foam Ocean. And you can find that under YouTube. And my son is a professional musician and a surfer, and he wrote this song called Glitter Foam Ocean. And when I heard it, I was like, oh, that song is so hypnotic and trancy.
Perfect.
So I'm like, hey, can I use that and embed some suggestions in there? And he's like, sure. So we went into his studio, and I think people will like it. So
that's really
cool. That is so awesome.
Look at that. Go to the Rise and Shine It's Hypno Time podcast on YouTube if you want, and subscribe, but we'll give you the information so you'll know when everything's coming up. Yeah.
And thank you so much. And we look forward to having you back soon.
Right on. Well, this has been a delight, and I hope to see you both soon at conference or someplace.
Oh, we're going to be there. We're going to be presenters too this year.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
We're
Very
presenting.
Cool.
This is a funny Deana-ism too, because they picked us for 2 hours instead of 1 hour. And I was just kind of panicking because I'm like, I have to talk for 2 hours instead of one. And Deana was like, all right, I said, what are we supposed to do with 2 hours? And Deana goes, 2 hours? That just gives us more time to be incredible. And I just love that. Like,
I don't remember saying it, but
I wrote it down.
But I know you can talk.
I love this
when you're on a subject, and so we'll probably ask you back, and if you want to expand on any of these particulars that you specialize in, we'd love to have more details. So we'll set that up with you too. Okay.
Yeah,
you got it. It would be an honor and a privilege to come back.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Rise and Shine It's Hypno Time podcast. If you found some value in this episode and enjoyed it, please consider liking, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star review. Most people may not know that interacting with our content and our channel helps us to continue the work we're doing and reach more people. And we just want to thank you again from the bottom of our hearts for being such a loyal listener. And don't forget to tune in next week and every Tuesday for the latest episode of the Rise and Shine It's Hypno Time podcast with Deana and Suzanne. See you next week.